Hi everyone, it's Den here. Well, you're watching this because my 2023 sailor show Duality has closed. It has been an absolutely magical week this week, but I want to spend some time with you, showing you through the show and having a bit of a chat about what it was all about, why. We'll have a look at some of the images and just spend some time together chatting about the show. It became really clear to me during the week that there's something quite different has happened here this week for me for a lot of reasons that we'll talk about. But one of the main ones is that, you know, in this sort of social media world, what happens for creatives like me is that we're sort of primed and prompted to be taking you on this journey of the creation of the images, you know, whether that's behind the scenes or reels or stories or whatever, and sometimes even showing you the images, and then we sort of exhibit them. And what happens is when people walk through the door and they look at the pictures for the first time, they almost feel like they kind of know the images. And one of the things that you'll realize as we walk around and have a look at the pictures is that this work is a little different for me on so many different ways. And so it was a real buzz this week to experience people coming through the door, walking into this absolutely amazing space and engaging with these images for the very first time. There were a lot of people came through who had never seen anything I'd ever done, and that's always really beautiful because they get to experience what light painting is. But there's also a lot of people who came through who have been following my work since I began, you know, 10 plus years ago, and it was a real joy watching them and talking to them as they experienced this sort of new body of work. Anyway, I thought it would just be absolutely lovely for us to spend some time together, and I'll take you through the exhibition as if you were here, which is really nice. And you know, yeah, come on, let's go have a chat. I'll take you through some of the stuff. I thought this would be a superb place to start because it's one of the things that I was getting asked a lot during the week is, out of all of these, which is your favourite image? And it ended up, after spending a week with these 13 photographs, this one here kind of has ended up being my favourite for a whole lot of reasons. And I think there's many, but I think the first reason it's really good is because this was a good image to bring people into the show, come up to the image, and I think it represents really well what the premise of the show is. And the idea of duality is this sort of me considering, after losing all of my social media, why I was making images, what I was making them for, and I wanted to try and represent that in a series of images. And this one's really good because what it is you can see that in the foreground, and this was the idea, in the foreground there's these really sharp defined elements of the image. And then in the background is something that's kind of soft and out of focus and a little grungy and moody. And of course there's the hand in here, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And what I wanted to represent in the show was this idea that when we're on social media, there's this sort of persona that we present to the world by the nature of what we're doing. And so you as the viewer get to sort of see this this person that exists, but by the nature of it, it's only ever what we choose you to see. I've always been super open about some challenges I've had, and I've been quite an open person on social media, but the reality is that you never get to see the stuff that is behind, the real us, the essence of who we are as humans. And this part in the background here kind of represents that, and you'll see this repeating itself throughout the show in many different ways. Now, the other reason this is a very special image is because this is my daughter Brittany's hand. She was over from Auckland and we were doing some work in the studio, and I asked her, I said, hey, would you like to come and make an image with me? And we did, and so it's very special for me in that way because I miss her desperately all the time because she lives in another country. So this became my favourite image very quickly. I love it quite deeply and personally. Yeah, so this is, I think it'll be a lovely place to start. Oh, well, There's all sorts of crazy spots in here for the show, so I'm probably looking pretty intense, but that's okay. This is a very, very special image to me now after the show. And I used it in the marketing for the show, so you may have already seen this. But it's magical for quite a few reasons. Firstly, I made it in this space, in this amazing hall. I came here to do the proof of concept for the idea to do some work, and ended up making some pretty special pics. And this one made it in. And I want to tell you a little bit about the idea, how I made it, and why it's quite special. Now, behind me here, you can see a pretty traditional Denis Smith image, which is the ball of light, which is this glowing sort of orb of light that I have taken around and put in different places. And it's always been special to me. It's where my light painting started, but it's always been my safe place. It's always been a beautiful meditation as you make them. But I literally had this idea pop into my head, it may have even been a dream, that there's this kind of juxtaposition and the whole theme of duality, of the sort of seen and unseen, the real and the unreal, and the self and ego and bits and pieces. And I had this vision of the opposite. So rather than a sort of this glowing sphere of light, is the opposite, like a black hole. And what I did is I made the decision to try and represent that using paint. And for the first time ever, I actually painted onto the material that I used to create them, that we'll talk about in a minute. And it was hilarious because I've never actually, apart from renovating a house, I'd never actually painted anything. So I did some painting. I got a mate, Chris, who's an art teacher, to come down and give me a bit of a lesson on how to put paint on a brush and push it around on material. And this was kind of the result. And the technique, and I've been looking forward to talking about this. There is a fantastic, someone I consider to be a friend, and an extremely gorgeous guy in America, Jason Reinhardt. And about, I want to say 2 years ago, I did an interview on my YouTube channel with Jason about a technique that he had, that he was using with his gorgeous daughters in their studio, where he would use a sheet, and he puts this sheet up and he creates these sort of, just like this, these amazing sort of out of focus, beautiful out of focus shots with the kids and the hands and projection and stuff. And as I was here in the studio, I was just mucking around, and I ended up putting my hand up and putting the fiber optic behind it. And I realized almost instantly when I did it that it had obviously popped into my head from spending time with Jason talking about his work. Because when I remember clearly looking at the images of Jason's and feeling this really deep connection to them. He's a great father with his gorgeous daughters, and there's this connection with me and mine. And at the time I hadn't seen my daughter for a long time when I had seen these images. And so it reminds me always that as creatives and artists, and especially as light painters, we always stand on the shoulders of giants. There's nothing you see in this room at all that isn't me taking ideas and concepts that I've seen from other artists, we'll talk about it a bit more, and then bringing it together to create a story or to tell an emotion. And with this image here, it was a real buzz for me, because what I was bringing together was something new in the painting. It was telling this story that I was trying to tell of, this is me behind the image, and you don't see that, and quite a difficult period of my life. This black hole, which is this juxtaposition, using fiber optics from Jason at Light Painting Brushes, which is a guy that I just adore. So, bringing all these things together to create this image that ended up telling the story that I was trying to tell. I've been looking forward to talking about the fact that in reality these images are really almost, I feel sometimes, like a collaboration between myself and artists that I adore and respect immensely. So thanks Jason's for being a part of my show, really, and helping me to tell my story. Oh my gosh, I've got something very cool to show you now. I always just want to wrap myself up in this image, and I hope this goes okay. Whenever I am near this photograph, I feel quite emotional. It is we had to, there were, I think I'll have to check, there was something like 3,500 images in my Lightroom catalog that I created specifically for this show. So 3,500 files that I had to pick from. And when we sat down and tried to pick the final 12, and it ended up being 13 because I couldn't do it. This one ended up, or the one from this series ended up being a no-brainer, and it was the very first one to sell. We sold all these large ones as individuals. It sold immediately on the opening night, and it kind of floored me a little bit, but it was neat because it made me realize that there was something special about it. I knew there was something special. I'll describe to you in a minute, but having spent time with it over the last week, it's become quite a deeply personal. It's become quite a deeply personal image to me. So I'll tell you how it's made. It's just gorgeous. So this material in the background here, my daughter Brittany is a practicing artist, and she has this incredible series that she's just produced and also shown in New Zealand, where she weaves this stuff. As you can see here, the little fine tassels. So she weaves these into sheets and then creates bodies of work using these sheets. And she was over from New Zealand, and this is one that she gave me as a gift, by the way. She was over from New Zealand, and we were photographing a show. We were photographing some work for her, and doing a bunch of stuff in the studio. And I ended up deciding to use this in a piece because, for all sorts of reasons, it's this whole thing of this duality, that there's this part of us that we don't sort of talk about a lot, and missing my daughter is such a massive part of that. So I wanted to integrate this. So I got this amazing thing that she had made, and I suspended it in the studio, and I would light it. I'd put light over it, and then what I did is I decided to create this shape in front of it that represented me, and then the background was her. But I tried really hard to match the colors on the blades to match her work, and it took ages to get it right because it's quite a fiddly technique that we use. And I made a whole lot of images, and this one kind of popped for me because there was somewhere the background was really in focus, which I really loved. But it fitted the show because there was this out of focus part that is her, and this part in the front that is me, and it was just beautiful making it. It was such a joy. And it printed beautifully, and it's been really popular in the show. I have stood here and described this process to so many people this week. It's a very special photo. And again, let's pay some homage to the greats, to people that have influenced me. Rob Turney and Patrick Rochon basically taught me the idea of how to use a blade, but not just how to use a blade, but how to create flow and shape and with using blades. And every time I was in the studio, I felt like Patrick and Rob Turney were with me in there, guiding me with the light, and it was really nice. All right, well look, here's a bit of fun. This is the only image in the show that was not created specifically for the Duality exhibition. But when I was putting the selection together, there was something that just popped for me in my mind, and I just decided to include this image for all sorts of reasons. And no surprise, it has been just a wonderful, wonderful addition for so many reasons. And one of those reasons is that people always stop at this photograph and are just gazing at it. And I end up down here talking through the process and how it's made, but I'll talk you through it. So this is an image from my By the Line series, and the whole idea of the By the Line, you can see this tattoo on my arm here, which is a line that is all about duality. It's about the two sides of my life, good, bad, hard, easy, all that stuff. And so I started making this series called By the Line, and what I was doing is creating this light in space and putting it into different areas. And then what it ended up being was a portrait series. Now, I'm very early in this series. It's been a couple of years, but this one is quite special. There's me in there, and it's been neat watching people come up to the image and looking at it and looking at it, and then it's like, you can see they see me in here. But I thought I'd just include an image that I could talk to a story of mental health and positivity around it and healing and all of that. But yeah, I don't. But those of you photographers out there, I know it's always a joy when you see this, and when you learn that this is an image that is fundamentally, as all these are, what you would see on the back of the camera. There are no pixels added or removed from this image, and it's always a joy talking people through that that have never seen light painting before, because they get to experience this sort of concept that we create everything in camera, which is a real buzz. But yeah, by the line, beautiful. I'm looking forward to kicking it off again, actually. All right. Well, look, here's for obvious reasons, here's an image that is quite personal. I don't have any clothes on when I'm making this photograph, but this was the second thing I ever tried to paint in the background here, and it was a huge amount of fun because I was just experimenting. It was the first time I really just got the paint and just went nuts and just thought, I just want to make something that sort of, I was trying to create a certain effect, like quite a deep, sort of a whole, I wanted this 3D effect kind of in the image, and it didn't, it's really cool because it didn't work. I remember looking at it going, damn, it wasn't quite what I wanted, you know. But what I did is I decided to I just decided to work with it and just do something with it. And there's another image in the show that I ended up using the same bit of paint. But what I did is I remember being in the studio and just not feeling well, really, just not feeling very happy, or I can't remember the day. But what I did is I thought, I'm just gonna just attack it, like really, really just get into it. And what ended up happening was the room was very dark, and I just decided to spend some time with the light. And I remember being in here and just being bathed in light, and I kind of transformed from this really quite difficult moment in my mind to walking out of the room almost feeling cleansed, and it was quite transformative and fun, if I'm honest. But this is a neat one to describe to you because it uses a technique where, by the nature of the technique, I end up with hundreds of images. And so in my Lightroom catalog, there's just this whole swathe of just me silhouetted against the light. And what ended up happening is when I was looking at the screen as I was making them, and my head was sort of, I just kept moving my head into this sort of halo of chaos, and it became really obvious that what I had done is actually recreated how my head felt at the time, and often feels. There's some images that don't need a lot of describing. One of the really neat things here at the exhibition has been watching people's reaction when they see one of these images and then walk past and go down to where the video is. And I made a lot of behind the scenes video when I was creating the work because I knew it was going to be here, and I knew people would be coming through the door sort of trying to figure out what was going on. And this is a really neat one because it was one of the first that I created in the series with this concept of, you know, this sort of sharp, clearly defined foreground coming into a soft, this sort of behind, out of focus part that we don't really know. And it was really neat making this and then having the video there. It worked so well. And just an image that I enjoyed making so much, and I made it in this room. It was really, it was a real buzz coming back and exhibiting the work here in the hall where I made it. It was, real nice. Oh my gosh, I am so wrecked. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. today is the last day of the show and I'm absolutely worn out. It's so neat. I have talked about this work so much, which has been a real joy. What other ones? I'm trying to think which other ones we should really talk through. I mean, look, I can't really not talk about this, and I don't need to show you the image close, but there is an image back here. I may put it on the screen now, I don't know, but I made an image. I had an idea, and the idea was to put words on the backdrop. Just go into the studio and see how it made me feel working around those words. And this particular one here, I nearly didn't put it in the show because I knew it would be difficult for me to even be in the room with, because what it does for me personally is reminds me of some stuff that's very hard for me, right? But I've covered it in light, and it's difficult to see, and it fitted the idea of the show because it creates this thing. And what absolutely floored me was how without anybody knowing really what the story was for me personally, it connected with them so much that they actually purchased the piece of work. And it was a little complicated for me because I couldn't understand, you know, in my mind, in my subconscious, I'm trying to figure out why someone would want to own something about something that was so difficult for me personally. But it made me realize that what happens with a lot of these images, right, and with all art and with all photography, is that everything can mean something different for every person. It connects with someone in a different way. People might see a color that they respond to, or in this case, a word that they respond to, or yeah, and that really blew me away. It opened my eyes a lot to that, an idea that I already knew, but seeing it in person was a real buzz. And this was a very popular image that ended up, actually, people have ended up owning versions of it, which is a real joy. But it's, yeah, people were connecting with a lot of these images for different reasons. And I think that's really the difference between this work for me and stuff I've always made in the past. Someone said to me the morning after the opening, and I thought this was really beautiful and also quite timely. Someone said to me, for all the time you've been making work, there's a real difference here, because the work that I've shown in the past, what it has said is, hey, look at what I can do. And now with this work, it says, hey, look who I am. And it was really profound to hear someone say that, because that's how it kind of feels, which is really, really, really beautiful. Let's go ahead and look at something a bit fun. I want to show you something a bit fun. Come on over here, I want to show you this. So here's a picture. What I decided to do, I made the decision to include one image in the show just because I thought it was really beautiful. It was a great moment in the studio because I was channeling my Rob Turney and Patrick Rochon just by being in the studio with a blade, just really being in the flow. I think I was in there for an hour or an hour and a half, like a long time. I had put a blade together that just felt really right in its color. And yeah, I just got in the studio, cranked the tunes, and just went really hard with the blade. And I allowed myself the opportunity to just put one image in the show that was just purely because I thought it was really beautiful, for no other reason, no real. And also, I mean, again, like I was saying before, I felt like I had my mates in the studio with me, and we were, yeah, I was channeling the great light bladers. Yeah, I love it. I love this pic. This one was for me, not for anyone else really. Oh, there's all sorts of light splashing around me. Look, let's do this. Let's go back a bit. Okay, here we go. Phew. Astro is always amazing, right? Because people come into the show, and a lot of photographers come to the show, right? Because it's photography, and pretty much everyone's had a crack at some astro, but it's really neat having a picture in here that is a single exposure, like every single image that I make. This is one exposure, and I want to tell you a little bit about it, because if you're a light painter or an astrophotographer, it's a bit of fun. So we made a couple of trips up here to the Salt, and I was with my good mate Ollie, and we went up, and there was the idea is I wanted the core to be closer to the horizon and then me be in front of the core, and the idea is just because whenever I go to these places it's always beautiful feeling this beautiful sense of being in these massive open places and being really alone, but then realizing that boom, there are billions of stars in this image, and are we really alone? But technically it was a very complicated shot because the camera is set super sensitive. I have to have a look, maybe 32 or 6400 ISO, and it's a blade, but I had the blade on the absolute minimum setting, and I would hold it there and I'd turn the blade on and turn it off for 15 seconds, and it was just way too bright. So I rigged up a button on the light so that I could put it up there and just pop, I'd just pop the light just ever so slightly, and look at the amount of light that it put onto the ground and stuff. It was just gorgeous. Yeah, a neat photo, and yeah, it was very cold and very muddy, and Ollie was there pushing the button because I couldn't do the remote and the button and everything, so thanks Ollie, you legend. They were good fun trips. But yeah, there's a bit of fun. And the farmer, you can see the farmers over here on the thing. And there were so many people came into the exhibition and they were looking at them and they're like, oh, is that a UFO? Or is this a shooting star? Because there's so many cool elements to it. I am not an astrophotographer, but yeah, I always enjoy putting these together because they're a lot of fun in a single shot. Oh, Star Wars, the kids thought it was Star Wars, which was fun. Well, there's a ball of light image in the show, and funnily enough, it ended up being a bit of a no-brainer that this was going to end up in the show because this is where it all began for me. Like literally, just down the beach from where this is kind of where my light painting began. Standing on a beach with a ball of light tool, wrapping myself in light. It always became my safe place. It was a meditation. The reality is that this little ball of light allowed me to travel the world and has been just this beautiful part of my life. But this particular image is here because it was about 6 months ago and I was having a moment, as you do, and it was really cold. But I remember looking outside and seeing the sunset, and I went, okay, and I picked up a tool and I forced myself to go down to the beach. By luck, this beautiful thing happens just on our beach, where when the tide goes out, you get these amazing ripples in the water. And I went down and I spun up a ball of light, and there was this moment where I went back and I looked at the back of the camera. And this thing happened that always does. I have spun thousands and thousands of these things. And still, all these years later, I look at the back of the camera and I look at these images on the back of the camera, and it fills me with joy. I just feel these feelings of, this is my safe place. Joy, safety, and just giggles. It still blows me away that you can get an image like this, and it just happened to be this lovely night. But what I realized is that in the context of the show, in the context of duality, of this sort of known and unknown and self and ego and all these things, is that just like we have this out of focus aspect of a lot of these with the clarity in the front, there's this very clearly defined orb, ball of light here, but in the reflection, it's a bit broken up and a bit scrambled, right? It fitted the narrative. I'll leave that with you to have a think about it, what you want. But yeah, it was a bit of a no-brainer, really. And of course, it fits this sort of idea that I had of here having this sort of black hole, the duality and the juxtaposition of this very bright, exciting, sort of beautiful thing, and this quite dark, ominous thing. So one of the things we did here at Duality was we had this whole aspect of the video here, so that as people came through the room, they would sort of see the images and then go down and have a really clear idea of exactly what this light painting is. But what I did is each night at 7 o'clock, I set up down the back of the room here. I actually set up the rig I've been using to make the work. And yeah, we did a little sort of a demonstration. It was really nice because it wasn't it wasn't a workshop as such. It was just really showing people the how, so it just opened up again the sort of knowledge of how it was done and the technique. But also, more so just a feeling of how I was as I was making it, where my head was at, where my head space was at. And of course, you cannot have any light painting event without taking care of the medium-sized humans. So each night I had, I had a mini little one on my backlight for the kids, and they absolutely loved it. They always do. And then 2 or 3 days in, I realized that it was just getting crazy down here. So I set up a whole kid zone up on the stage. So each night, or during the day, the kids could just come in and have a play. So that was absolutely magic and a real hit, and something I'll always add into future shows. You're probably feeling quite relieved now that I haven't taken you through all 13 images. You'll find them on the website. You're probably looking at them somewhere around here right now. But yeah, it's what a joy just getting a chance to take you around and show you through some of the images. We didn't talk about this one. There's a few of them we didn't chat about, but that's okay. You can look at those and breathe into them, whatever they make you feel. I feel like there's a line in the sand for me. I don't know, I just want to share that with you. This has been a really sort of a cathartic, beautiful experience putting this show together. It's been an amazing year, really reflecting on who I am creatively, why I do this thing, who I do it for. And I made some images that for me really feel like something new. Even though it's not. They're all just, like I was saying before, they're all of these images are just culminations of techniques and ideas. James Turrell, the whole idea, I'm going to do this thing, right? The whole idea of this over here, of this sort of backdrop, this luminous backdrop, it comes from James Turrell, mixing it in with Jason Reinhardt and the blading and all these things, all these different things that have sort of been the last 15 years of my life all coming together in this, so to try and tell a story to people about, just sort of bring some, I think in a way, put the spotlight on this madness that seems to be social media, in this case just around the arts, but making images for likes. I loved every image I ever made. Like, don't get me wrong, there's not a photograph I've made that I don't love. I know over the years people have looked at what I've done and it's inspired them to go and have a go. I've done so many workshops and bits and pieces, and I have loved every moment of it. But losing my social media last year, what it did is it just made me sort of snap out of it, sit back, take a breath, and just really reconsider what it is I want to do with the next phase of my artistic career. And I've got some pretty neat ideas, I reckon. But yeah, Duality, thanks for coming and hanging out with me. I'm going to move over here, and I'm going to just go to list here all of the amazing people who have helped me through this sponsorship and just people that have connected with me. But these people are amazing, but of course my just outrageously gorgeous wife Kyrie, part of the last 10 years has been her supporting me through the madness, allowing me to go and be who I need to be in order to develop this art career. I think she's never stopped me, she never questioned me at all. She always allowed me to go out and be me. So, you gorgeous creature. My business partner Sam, Dave Laslett, who not just coming and helping me set up the exhibition, but just being such an inspiration. Ollie, you bloody legend, coming and helping out. Daniel, my printer, there's the businesses, but there's the humans. These people have tolerated me over the years and just stood by my side and allowed me to do this. And here we are. Of course, you can buy these. They will be, I think there are some limited editions left. They'll be available for sale if you want some duality in your life. And hey, let's go. I want to go see what's next. I'm going to pack this up tomorrow and just go out and just go nuts. Something a bit special is coming, I think. Thank you. Thanks for coming with me on this journey. I said the journey word. I don't know. Let's go. Let's just go have some fun.